Hey readers, Chris Paukert, Winding Road Editor-in-Chief here with your latest Ask It answers. In front of me is the 2008 Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution GSR. Now, for those that don't have crib sheets in front of them, the GSR is in fact the base spec Lancer Evo. That means you don't get the high-tech 6-speed twin clutch, you get a 5-speed manual transmission, and you get the quote-unquote base suspension and brakes, but that still means some lovely Brembo brakes here, front and rear, discs all the way around obviously. 18-inch wheels on this one. A little bit more subdued this time out in terms of styling, though still aggressive. Fender vents, a number of vents on the hood here, and of course that big gaping maw right down there, as if on cue. It's the intercooler there. Some fairly aggressive looking headlamps. All in, a lot of people are suggesting that maybe this is a little bit softer visually than the last Evo, and I have to say I sort of agree, but it doesn't really diminish the impact to me. This is a more integrated form. Now the other thing that's happened between this generation and the last generation is the basic styling went and got a lot better looking on the Lancer, and they started using bigger wheel and tire packages on the standard non-forced induction cars. So there may not be quite the visual differentiation that there once was, but the whole package is a lot more balanced, and it's still quite aggressive. The rear wing, the trademark rear wing, is a bit more reserved than it was the last time out, which helps somewhat with visibility, but people will still see you coming and going in this one. We still got a lot of thumbs up. I think one of our contributors actually got a couple of middle fingers. So that's the brief outside tour, and we'll get into some specific questions from you readers here in just a second. As I mentioned before, performance-wise, this is the standard car, which means it has the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, which produces 295 horsepower and an even 300 foot-pounds of torque. And it's routed through an all-wheel drive setup here with a 5-speed manual. A great deal of fun to be had here. It's definitely quieter and a little bit more softly sprung than the last Evo, but I would say that overall that's actually to its benefit. It's more usable on a day-to-day basis. It's got more torque throughout the rev range, and it's a livable car. That's not to say, however, that this car has gotten so soft and gone all Mazda Speed 6 or maybe Audi S4 on you. Not that those aren't both wonderful cars in their own right, but this is still a pretty precise tool, pretty uncompromising. It's still loud inside, it's still boomy, both from the engine and the exhaust. You still hear the blow-off valve, you still hear the turbo, you still turn heads, and it's still an experience. In specific, readers the German asked, how noticeable is the turbo lag? And it's a little bit less noticeable than last time out, and in fact I would say it's less acute than on its arch rival, the Subaru WRX STI, but it's still obviously a blown 4-cylinder. You're not going to mistake this for a V6 or a V8. There is still a certain degree of that wait, whoom, and that's sort of an integral part of the experience of this vehicle, and I don't think they're ever going to completely dial that out. Reader Dieselhead asked if the standard manual transmission was good. It's a fair question. It is a good transmission. It's a 5-speed. We kind of wish that there was a 6-speed. Not so much for fuel economy, but sort of to keep us out of trouble on the highway. We figure a super tall 6th gear would not only save a little bit of fuel, but it might save our licenses as well, and maybe a little bit of our eardrums. It's fairly boomy at highway speeds, and that would probably cure a little bit of it. That said, the throws are a little bit more direct and a little bit more mechanical in action in their feel. So we're quite pleased with that. The clutch remains sort of an on-off switch, not terribly easy to modulate. Most of its engagement point is pretty high off of the carpet. So you push the pedal all the way in, it's fairly firm. You release it, nothing, and then it's that last third of travel that really is what engages. So it's hard for first-timers or people that aren't experienced with such vehicles, but once you get on the move, the short engagement period or moment in the clutch pedal really helps you execute some fast shifts. Reader Dieselhead also asked about turn-in and balance, and I would say both of those are excellent. Historically, the Evo has cornered a bit flatter than the comparable Subaru WRX STI, and that's still true. It feels like it's got a lower center of gravity. It just simply does not roll as much. The ride is firm, of course, but it is more compliant than it used to be. That said, turn-in is still sharp. We've got 18-inch Yokos on this car, and they handle everything nicely. There is a fair amount of road noise generated from them, but it's not out of keeping with a car of this character. Time to take a look inside. I don't know if you could hear it, but the feel of the door handle there is not the greatest. The sound that it makes and all of that is not great, but if you're really concerned about such minutiae, you're probably not an Evo driver. Basic instrumentation ahead, featuring, you might not be able to see this from the glare, but a speedometer with hash marks to 190 miles an hour. Fairly, I would say, ambitious there, but maybe useful for all you tuner types. Red line of 7,000 RPM on the large tachometer. And up front, there's the information display. Right now, it's toggled to snow. Not for any apparent reason, it was actually in tarmac before. But there's a little switch that you thumb here on the steering wheel. Blurry, blurry, blurry. There it is. Right where you would expect the volume control or track switcher on the CD player. And that'll actually modulate the differential tunings here. So you've got gravel, snow, and tarmac. The rest of the interior is sort of unsurprisingly largely standard issue Lancer, which is to say newly competitive for its class, a very simple, sleek design, not the world's best materials, decent panel fit. We did hear over some rough roads a little bit of rattling around, not much in the way of squeaking, but it seems fairly well put together. It's definitely a lot cleaner and better integrated than the last one, as is true of the latest WRX. They've really stepped it up. But for those expecting kind of the switchgear feel, you can hear that. Sort of feels cheap. And some of the material finishes, this is hard touch plastic, not soft touch, although it's nicely grained. You're going to be out of luck. This car is about $33,600, and it basically feels like a $16,000 economy car with a bunch of admittedly very nice modifications to its interior, including the aforementioned 3-spoke wheel, which is leather wrapped and just the right thickness. Feels great in the hand, although it doesn't telescope, which is kind of a bummer. We've got super grippy Recaro seats, and those look and feel fantastic, although I will say I could probably do without the carbon fiber with a K insets here. That's really not doing it for me personally, but it does liven up what is otherwise a fairly standard issue Lancer interior. Reader MB SLRM asked if every model here comes with a navigation system, and as you can plainly see here, that is not the case. What you're looking at here is a 6-disc in-dash changer with some very basic switchgear, which is just fine, although I will say that the display over there up at the top with the red readout tends to wash out in direct sunlight, so that can be bothersome. That said, I believe you can spec out a higher end unit. We'll have to check into that for our readers, and perhaps we can add that in the text of this post. Alright, our final question comes from reader Jonathan Fung, and he asked a pretty interesting question. He said, if this vehicle had a theme song, what would it be? Now, we're not going to be hearing Allman Brothers, we're not going to be hearing Mozart, we're not going to be listening to Tupac here, although I suppose you could. With all of the technology that's inside this vehicle, even though it doesn't have the twin clutch transmission, and with its strong sort of video game generation appeal, I've got to believe that the theme song to the Evo here is techno. And in specific, I can't think of offhand of any more irreverent a song with a driving beat that sort of makes you want to drive faster and faster than Prodigy's Smack My Bitch Up. Maybe a little un-PC, but throw that disc in this car and prepare to lose your license. Thanks guys, hope you enjoyed it, and looking forward to your next questions and your next Ask It.